Good day, everybody. That nihilistic rabbit here. Life. It never died. But the world that we live in is always changing and always trying to bring you down to your knees, especially nowadays. So many people cope in many ways. Substances, media, hobbies, or if you're like my buddy Milo, thugging it out. There are plenty of albums about the little things that make life both hard and easier to bear, and We Are Eternal is a project trying to capture all of the turmoil. Originally made by Sergeant Talby, the 6-part series was going to be entirely by herself, but during the making of the parts 5 and 6, the laptop she was working on bricked, and all of the files she had for both of them were gone. So enlisting the help of community big-timers like Jordan, Phi Sigma, and Cinnamon, we were able to receive the full 6-part series. In order to show appreciation for the help, Talby added viewers like you and listed the contributors within the description. A majority of this album talks of the horrors of life, and how rejection, self-isolation, and drug abuse can lead a person into a range of extreme and terrifying emotions. From the numbing and debilitating feelings of depression and anxiety, to the extreme and violent feelings of mania and derealization, We Are Eternal has it all. And I'm going to get right into it, wasting no more time talking about the background of the albums, as it speaks for itself. Part 1 of this 6-part journey starts with the act of letting yourself cry. Wallow in your sorrows, numbing yourself and trying to do anything and everything to stop feeling. It's a suite of music and commercial chaos. A2, the first track made with music rather than commercials, is this gut-wrenching sound by Bill Evans, the pianist for John Coltrane, on Giant Steps. It has that pain and sadness that something like lacunar amnesia has at the beginning of persistent repetition of phrases. Continuing down, I'm getting from most of the album sense of both peace and deep depression. A5 gives me the same feeling as Televangelism by Ethel Cain. Peace but not safety. It dips frequently to make sure you're not feeling secure in your own home. Part 1 also has a great deal of spiraling, cyclical tracks that add on to the uses of substances to numb yourself with, letting your head begin to roll around to get away from a life that you are not happy with. I enjoy the flipping through channels on the beginning and end of the part, as it gives a feeling of finding anything to watch as background noise to black out those horrendous thoughts. Part 2 is the act of trying to get better. Getting yourself off the ground to become better in life. Letting yourself pat the dust off your pants where you've been knocked down. It's a shaky feeling, unsure of yourself while you're starting the beginning phases of help. This is reflected in the first 4 tracks, all having a glimmer of hope, but still trapped in uneasiness and depression. C3 feels like a falter for half its runtime, adding onto that feeling of what you are doing won't even matter to your overall health. A bit of a turn happens when we get to C5 to the end of the part, and I just want to highlight this place specifically with a story of my own. I'm a very reclusive and worrisome person. I feel constantly that what I'm doing isn't good enough, that I'll never make it out of the place I was born. I'll never amount to anything worthwhile like my sister has. I'll never achieve that academic height that my younger sibling has at 16. I'll never find a partner that treats me like a human being like my brother has. And it's reminded every single day by my parents whenever I talk to them. In their words, I'm fine. It's just a misstep. I'll get out of here eventually. But in their actions and in my overly analyzing brain, I feel as though nothing that they are saying is what they are thinking. I feel I am unworthy of being told I'm proud of you, that I'm a drug-addicted loser furry that has 0 traits that would make them special enough to be recognized. What C5 and C6 were telling was exactly the kind of thing I fear happens every single time I have conversations with my family. That if I were to get better, or tell that I am doing better, that it will all just be struck down by the achievements of others and laughed at for even considering that what I'm doing is anything worth being told. The entire D side of this part is what I imagine the audio of my brain is when these things happen. A hopeful and doable mind begun to fall into the same old habits over and over again. The feeling of wanting better is gone, and all that remains is shame.
You hate everyone. To you, everyone's either a moron.
There are 2 major feelings on this part: frustration and losing grip. The east side has an anger to it, one that smells of self-isolation growing manic. This is something I've had before, that feeling that you are slowly getting angrier without explanation. So much so that those intrusive and impulsive thoughts become the only thoughts that you have. It starts off quietly with things like E3, E8, and E7 feeling like something's wrong, but it isn't enough to tell someone about it. Burying it inside lets it fester, lets it start turning into more thoughts. The east side also has a sense of an itch and withdrawal to it, like you are quietly struggling to keep yourself contained around substances. F1, while also feeling delusional and paranoid, also marks this feeling of grabbing that bottle, lighting that smoke, or dropping the acid on your tongue, relapsing into something and going as deep as possible into a place you haven't touched for years, and it really, really shows. F2 through F4 have a sense of belonging before quickly becoming worse. You did it too much, and now you have that pain over and over again, with the next 3 tracks being the last bit of consciousness. It's like you're passing out completely while the rest of the people around you are trying to find you help and get you to the hospital. Which is also the reason why F8 sounds so hopeful in a way. You are being given the help you need, despite that meaning you have to be in the hospital for a while after relapsing. Part 3 in general is that feeling of trying to quit, but after a while just picking it up again, like a vicious cycle that I've been through and still going through with my smoking habits. I stop, I try to get clean by switching to other methods, but it eventually just leads back to where you were before. Right as you think you're being saved and that everything will be okay, you are completely thrown into the pit of worrisome thoughts and incoherent speech. Unlike the previous parts or even the last side we visited, Part 4 overall is a complete breakdown of a mind, not literally, but mentally and emotionally becoming unable to control anything. G1 starts off like you are being shown 13 different videos and 3 different podcast clips at the same time. It feels like everything is being thrown at you, and you have to answer every single question one by one in quick succession. It has multiple sections. In between the massive talking and screams of the damned, there are several bits of clarity where it feels like there's nothing wrong with your head. But G2 starts off with a beautiful guitar piece, before receiving the rude awakening of being broken up and busted down people repeatedly singing in your ears. Most of G2 relies on that first sample, stretching in and out to form different feelings of clarity and unease. G3 is what I would describe as a black gaze track minus the drums and guitar. It's ear-shattering and distant screams of terror surround you, only breaking in the final minute to create a somewhat industrial-sounding array. G4 is that final minute turned into a longer track, throwing it all out for bits of clarity and peace. H1 is what I can say is data mosh, a collection of chaos that begins clear and slowly disintegrates into something else entirely. Lots of voice recordings on H2 are about not being able to make time for yourself while you are in a relationship because of other obligations. H1 talks of holding your firstborn or a child who has just been given life as a clock begins to tick until it erupts. H3 rips everything that has been working and begins to cause nothing but noise, eventually releasing into bliss and then subsequently static. Part 4 is the part that is really warned about by Talby not to trip balls to, and thank God I was sober while I was listening to this because I would have probably had an incredibly bad time. We now get to where the viewers begin to show their contributions, and this is one that is something else. If I had to describe these 2 tracks in a few words, it would be Replica by One of Chicks Point Never being made by the Caretaker community and all their ideas. I1 specifically gave me sounds akin to Sleep Dealer, but it starts off with a joyful commercial, before turning into a trance track that had me hooked from start to finish. The next few sections call back to artists such as Vektroid and OPN mostly, these repeating but uniquely structured loops that lull you into a sense of comfort. However, that is broken by the final section of the track being fueled by delirium and insanity. J1 is a similar unstable position as the final section, with the last bits of part 4 thrown into it, being quite messy and unable to truly feel what those feelings as they were before. J1 is in a similar unstable position as the final section, with last bits of part 4 thrown into it, being quite messy and unable to truly feel those feelings as they were before. There's a part here that discusses how people can learn and develop their image of the people around them just by learning what they listen to, as if people were just data to be studied and analyzed. It is quite dystopian in that regard. It makes me think of my data constantly being collected in order to sell me products. I don't know if that was the intention, but it was the feeling that it gave me specifically. A lot of the final moments on this specific track at the end remind me of the collage of sounds and vocal layering on Tybee Island Horse Ghosts by Car Seat Headrest, where it feels like there is a complete lack of center and everything going in one ear and out the other. Overall, Part 5 is an excellent Vaporwave album and a great addition to the series we have today. This entire part feels like leaving everything behind, going away and never coming back, going off the grid and never seeing anyone ever again, but still longing for the normal human collection that many those after being stuck with drug-fueled isolation for so long. The K-side specifically sounds as though you are not okay, but you're hopeful, praying that things work out for the better. There's a haunting comfort to the side, like the horrors are not over, but they are able to be managed. The L side is possibly one of my favorite moments on the project entirely. L1, I kid you not, is a glitchy IDM song in the middle of an album full of plunderphonics. L2 had the same dystopian feeling J1's music analysis section had, but this time for the social media sphere, using Facebook's member count. L3 discusses feelings of being addicted for so long and after a while missing the feeling that it gave you. Interviews, PSAs about it, and a kid talking about being in the clouds but hating the feeling of coming down. M2 has created what I can only describe as the same feeling I got when I heard A Gate is Beyond for the first time. I remember it clearly. I was sitting at work, bored out of my mind, exhausted from the long day, and Olsen had come on. And at the very moment when the choir joins in, I bursted into tears without warning. The sheer celebration of life while things had been utterly dreadful was so believably beautiful to me that I was filled with ecstasy and moved to tears. This album did that, and I am eternally grateful that it did so. There's something beautiful about life. It's that no matter where you are, how you are doing, when you are awake or when you're asleep, there will always be someone out there that wants you around, wants you to be there, grow old with them. Friends will miss you if you're gone forever. Family will mourn and never fully recover from your death. My best friend I mentioned in the beginning has been there for me for 4 full years, and I have talked almost every day since 2022. I've known plenty of people that have come and gone out of my life, out of changing friend groups, drama within the circle, or just simply up and leaving me. I've had to deal with the passing of both of my grandparents through substances, bad habits, isolation. But he has always been there for me through my lowest moments and the happiest times of my life. Milo, I'm going to tell you right now that you're the only real reason I'm alive today. I would have ended my entire life without a trace if you didn't stick by me. This is the only fan project to make me cry in multiple spots. This is the only one that has made me so astounded by the structure of each individual track, of each individual sample's usage, and the message and compelling sound design that I've compared it to some of the greatest artists of all time. Talby is not a fan project maker. We Are Eternal is not a fan project. It is a collection of plunderphonics albums, worthy enough of sitting beside Since I Left You, vaporwave and sound collage that sits beside one of Tricks Point Never. She is a musician of a caliber that I would cry to. After listening to this album, I would want to listen to Hooverville, her album about the celebration of community and banded together in the worst of times. That album gave me the same feelings as every album I have listed above. I didn't want to give one this early and this soon into my career as a reviewer, but for everything I'm stating now, this is a perfect project. This is my first 100 out of 100. Talby, wherever you go, whatever you do next, please know that you are ahead of your time. You have moved someone who normally never cries to music, especially not as of recently, to crying in their bedroom. Stay safe, everyone, and in case I don't see you again, good morning, good afternoon, and good night.